tennis players predict 2026 major winners. Every year starts with the same question: who is going to win the slams? And every year the answers get more complicated. Because the landscape of tennis in 2026 is not simple. It is a sport living through one of the most riveting generational battles in its history, a women's game that has never been more unpredictable, and a 38-year-old Serbian legend who refuses to stop haunting everyone's predictions. So we went to the players, the coaches, the analysts, and the people inside the sport, and we asked them, who wins in 2026? The answers told a story that goes well beyond the obvious names. Let's start with what we already know for certain, because 2026 didn't wait around to make a statement. In Melbourne at the Australian Open, history was written before January was even finished. Carlos Alcaraz defeated Novak Djokovic in 4 sets, 2-6, 6-2, 6-3, 7-5, to win his first Australian Open title and become the youngest man in tennis history to complete the career Grand Slam. He was 22 years old. At 22, he smashed a record held by Don Budge since Roland Garros 1938. The previous mark had been standing for 88 years. Let that number settle for a moment. An emotional Alcaraz reflected on what had driven his preparation. "It's a great feeling. Completing a career Grand Slam was something that was on my mind," he said. "Every time that I come here to Australia, I just have preseason with my mind on this tournament to try to work as hard as I can and to be as well prepared as I can." The circumstances around his Melbourne triumph made it more remarkable, not less. Alcaraz had arrived under unusual circumstances, having split with longtime coach Juan Carlos Ferrero in December after 7 years together. "A lot of people were talking about everything and having doubts about my level," he said. "Coming this year, I was hungry for more, ambitious for getting the trophy, and being strong mentally enough, not hearing anything or any words from the people." He didn't just win, he did it against the greatest player in the sport's history, in what became the largest age gap between finalists in an Australian Open men's final in the Open era. And he did it coming from a set down, which is the Alcaraz signature move at this point, absorbing early pressure and then turning the match into something that nobody else on tour can handle. On the TV camera lens after the match, he wrote simply, "Job finished, 4 out of 4 complete." Djokovic, for his part, gave the assembled crowd and his rival the kind of send-off that only comes from someone who has been in this sport long enough to understand what they're witnessing. "Congratulations, Carlos, an amazing tournament," Djokovic said at the trophy presentation. "What you've been doing is, I think the best word to describe it is, historic, legendary." And he wasn't finished. "You're so young, you have a lot of time, like myself," he told Alcaraz. "I'm sure we'll be seeing each other many more times in the next 10 years. But before Alcaraz got to the final, Djokovic had to produce one of the most extraordinary performances seen on a tennis court in years. He defeated Jannik Sinner, the 2-time defending champion, in a 5-set semifinal that didn't finish until the early hours of the morning. In a post-match press conference that riveted the tennis world, Djokovic was direct about where he stood. "I never stopped believing in myself," he said. "There's a lot of people that doubt me. A lot of experts wanted to retire me or have retired me many times the last couple of years. I want to thank them all because they gave me strength. They gave me motivation to prove them wrong, which I have tonight." And when asked about what came next, about the final against Alcaraz, about his chances at a 25th Grand Slam title at 38 years old, Djokovic was completely honest. "History is on the line for both of us every time we play," he said. "He also had a big match, but he has 15, 16 years on me. You know, biologically, I think it's going to be a bit easier for him to recover. I'm just trying to enjoy the moment that I'm experiencing tonight." The moment ultimately belonged to Alcaraz, but what Djokovic did at that tournament reframed every remaining prediction about 2026, because this is a man who at 38 just beat the world number 2 in 5 sets in a Grand Slam semifinal. In his runner-up speech, Djokovic admitted he didn't think he'd be standing on a Grand Slam final podium again. Then came the line that should sit at the center of every prediction made about the rest of this year. "God knows what happens tomorrow, let alone in 6 or 12 months, he said. That is not a retirement speech, that is a man keeping every door open. On the women's side, the Australian Open delivered its own statement. Elena Rybakina defeated Aryna Sabalenka in the final to claim her second Grand Slam title. Rybakina's 6-4, 4-6, 6-4 victory over the world number 1 was described as a stunning return to form. For Sabalenka, the loss means she has now been runner-up at the Australian Open twice in 2 years. The hunger to fix that at Melbourne Park next year will be considerable. But right now, the field for the remaining 3 slams of 2026 is wide open, which brings us to the predictions. And this is where it gets genuinely interesting, because the people inside the sport are not in complete agreement. The French Open comes first in the remaining calendar. And on clay, there is something close to a consensus forming. Alcaraz is the defending champion, having won Roland Garros in both 2024 and 2025, including a 5-set epic against Sinner in last year's final that many described as one of the greatest matches ever played. Going into 2026, Alcaraz was positioned as the 2-time defending champion and described as having arguably been the most consistent player on the surface over the past few years, having also won 2 of the 3 Clay Masters 1000 level titles in 2025. Sinner, meanwhile, is carrying a specific motivation into Paris. He has never won a clay court Grand Slam. With the extra incentive of trying to complete the career Grand Slam, Sinner reached the French Open final in 2025 in his first event back following a 3-month suspension, pushing Alcaraz to the absolute limit before falling in 5 sets. The question is whether 2026 is the year he finds the additional clay court game to go one further. At Indian Wells this week, ahead of the clay season, Sinner was clear about where his focus lies. "It has been a very hard practice week here for me," he said. "We spent many hours of practice. I'm very happy with how I'm feeling on the court. In the same time, we also try to improve a couple of things. I'm trying to be slightly more aggressive at times on the baseline, and then we see how it goes." That last sentence is significant. Slightly more aggressive at times on the baseline is Sinner's way of saying, "I know exactly what went wrong in Paris, and I've been working on it." On the women's side at Roland Garros, the clay court landscape is defined by one name above all others. Iga Swiatek has won that title 4 times. She stumbled badly on clay in 2025, going out early and failing to reach any clay event final in the spring. But Wimbledon, where she delivered a near-perfect fortnight to beat Anisimova 6-0 in the final, showed what she is still capable of when everything clicks. Despite falling in the semifinals to Sabalenka in 2025, Swiatek remains the 4-time champion at Roland Garros and should be the favorite until further notice. The wildcard who shapes the entire women's conversation is Amanda Anisimova. In 2025, she reached 2 Grand Slam finals, losing at Wimbledon and reaching the final at the US Open. And she is being talked about with a seriousness that the sport hadn't given her before. The predictions from Inside Tennis for Anisimova in 2026 are striking in their confidence. Tennis Channel analyst Victoria Duval was unequivocal. "Amanda Anisimova will win her first Grand Slam for sure. Her performance this year has shown how strong her game is across different surfaces, and she will only continue to get better in 2026. Fellow analyst Coco Vandeweghe agreed, naming Anisimova as her women's pick for a first major, and Tennis Channel's Paul Annacone went in a different direction on the men's side. "I've got to go with my guy Taylor Fritz. The American looks to be getting more and more comfortable at the top, so if he stays healthy, I see him in the winner's circle." The outside picks on the men's side center on 3 names consistently. In a Tennis TV interview, Marin Cilic was direct about one specific prediction. "Novak is going to win one of the 4 majors," the Croatian said, and Wu Yibing, the 26-year-old Chinese ATP star, had a different name in mind entirely. "I'm looking forward that Jack Draper going to win maybe a Grand Slam," Wu said. "My friend, let's see." Draper, the British #1, has been dealing with injury issues but returned to the tour in time for the Sunshine Swing, and the grass court season at Wimbledon is widely viewed as his best shot at a first major. Wimbledon is the slam that produces the most division in predictions. On the women's side, Sabalenka has never won on grass, and Wimbledon remains the only major where she has yet to reach a final. She reached her 3rd semifinal at the All England Club in 2025 before being beaten by Anisimova in 3 sets. Despite that result, she remains the most consistent player at majors, having advanced to the semifinals or better at every slam she has played since the US Open in 2022. If she can close the errors on grass, a first Wimbledon title is within reach. Alcaraz has won at Wimbledon twice in 2023 and 2024. Sinner broke that streak last year, winning the title and ending Alcaraz's 2-year reign in the final. The rematch on grass in 2026 is the match that almost everyone in the sport is building towards. As of early March, Alcaraz holds a perfect 12-0 record in 2026 after winning the Australian Open and the Qatar Open, and was arriving at Indian Wells as the top seed. The momentum is all with him, but Sinner will not accept that frame. He never does. The US Open in the autumn is where the predictions for the women's game become most heated. Sabalenka is the 2-time defending champion in New York. She won in 2024 and again in 2025, and she has transformed Flushing Meadows into what feels like a personal fortress. This week at Indian Wells, she went further, backing a proposal to make women's matches best of 5 sets at the later stages of slams. "Yeah, let's do that," she said. "I feel like I would have probably more Grand Slams. Physically, I'm really strong, and I'm pretty confident that my body can handle that, so let's do it." That is the language of someone who believes the biggest stages bring out her best tennis. Coco Gauff, the reigning French Open champion, was characteristically measured in her response to the same proposal. I mean, it probably would favor me because I'm physically up there with the best, but I mean, I probably wouldn't want to see that happen, Gauff said. And if it were to happen, I would prefer it to be the whole tournament, not just the quarters. I think changing the format in the middle of the tournament defeats the purpose of the playing field. That answer tells you something about how Gauff operates. She sees the angles. She is thinking about the structure of competition, not just the competition itself. Swiatek went even further in her opposition. I think honestly, it's a weird approach in the world where everything is becoming faster, she said. So I don't know if the audience honestly would like that. Also, I don't know if we would be able to keep the quality for 5 sets. The debate is a sideshow, but the underlying point it reveals is not. The women's game in 2026 is built around 3 players who are competing at an intensity and a consistency that the sport hasn't seen in years: Sabalenka, Swiatek, Gauff. And lurking directly behind that trio is Anisimova, Rybakina after her Australian Open triumph, and a 17-year-old Russian named Mira Andreeva who won at Indian Wells in 2025 and is being talked about as the next genuinely generational talent on the WTA Tour. What the players themselves seem to agree on most clearly is this: 2026 belongs to Alcaraz and Sinner on the men's side until someone proves otherwise. Alcaraz and Sinner have now won the last 9 majors in a row between them, a statistic that ties them second in the Open era with Djokovic and Nadal's 9 in a row between 2010 Roland Garros and 2012 Roland Garros. The only men to sustain that kind of dominance together for longer in the modern era were Federer and Nadal, who did it for 11 straight. But perhaps the most resonant reflection on where tennis stands right now came not from a prediction, but from a young champion processing the scale of what he had just accomplished. After completing the career Grand Slam, Alcaraz was asked about the possibility of a calendar Grand Slam site, winning all 4 in a single year, something no man has done since Rod Laver in 1969. "Those are big words, to be honest," he said. I just want it to be one at a time. Right now, next one is French Open. I have great memories in that tournament. I feel really special every time that I go there. I don't want to put myself in a really pressure position, but, it's going to be great." The greatest player in the world right now at 22 still choosing humility over hype. That is either the most reassuring thing in tennis or the most terrifying for every opponent who has to stand on the other side of the net and try to beat him. The year is 3 months old, 3 slams remain, the predictions have been made, and tennis, as always, is about to prove most of them wrong, which is exactly what makes it unmissable. Who do you think wins the next 3 majors? Let me know in the comments below.